The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
On Friday, Obama campaign manager Jim Messina offered the Romney campaign a deal, release 5 years of tax returns, and we won't ask for any more. Isn't that a distraction from the major issues of the economy and jobs and national debt and foreign policy that the president says he wants his campaign to be about?
I don't think taxes are in any way a distraction from this campaign. I think they're very central to this campaign.
But we're talking about Mitt Romney's personal tax returns. We're not talking about tax policy for all of Americans.
Oh, but we are talking about tax policy for all Americans.
You can have that argument without having his tax returns.
Well, we're going to have that argument, and we should see his tax returns. His father said you shouldn't just put out 1 or 2 years. You should put out a series of tax returns, 12 to 13 years. Mitt Romney provided 23 years to John McCain. We're about to have a very fundamentally important debate about the direction of tax reform in this country. And I think if Mitt Romney proposes to be president of the United States and lead us through tax reform, shouldn't the American people understand the offshoring and the outsourcing and the tax havens that he takes advantage of in his tax return, and understand how those values would govern the tax reform decisions that he might make as president? I think what is really stunning, Chris, is that, look, Mitt Romney is a highly educated man, and he has clearly made a decision that what is in those tax returns is far more damaging to him than to do what every presidential candidate has done, which is show the American people your personal finances. He's clearly decided that it's far too damaging.
If the president is so interested in transparency, as you indicate, why is it that he's held one news conference at the White House this year, and that was back in March, more than 5 months ago, and why is it that he refused to release documents to Congress, invoked executive privilege on Operation Fast and Furious?
Well, let's talk about the situation of interviewing the president. The president, let me just give you some statistics. I wrote them down so I wouldn't get them wrong. In the month of August, and we're only 19 days into August, the president's done 13 local TV interviews.
Yeah, that includes Entertainment Tonight. That incled being asked that included being asked what his favorite song, workout song was.
Do I get to answer the question, too?
Well, I mean, were those not some of the interviews?
11 radio interviews and five roundtable interviews with 15 print journalists.
Why not sit down with the White House press corps?
Look, I think the president, and the president did take a question from the White House press corps regarding the shooting that happened in Wisconsin.
A question?
Look, Chris, I think the White House press corps, I spent a little bit of time in the press room. The White House press corps has good questions, but so do local TV stations in Iowa and in Colorado and Ohio, who regularly get to ask the president questions. The notion that this president is somehow not doing interviews is ridiculous. Not long ago, we were answering questions and charges from the Republicans that somehow Barack Obama was overexposed.
We're looking forward to our first interview of his presidency here on Fox News Sunday.
Well, I know that the president has spent time with Bret Baier. I believe you interviewed the president at the White House when I was there. Is that correct?
That's true. Back in February, 1 month into his presidency.
Not too bad.
Really?
Well,
but it never on Fox News Sunday. In any case, enough special pleading. This week, Vice President Biden spoke in Virginia to a crowd, including a large number of African Americans. Here's what he said.
He's going to let the big banks once again write their own rules. Unchain Wall Street. They're going to put you all back in chains.
Wasn't that race baiting?
No more race baiting than when John Boehner says, let's unshackle Wall Street. Let's unshackle big business.
No,
it's pretty
please.
Clear
he says, we're going to put you all to a crowd of African Americans.
We're going to put you all.
There was a large number of African Americans in that audience.
Not exclusively an African American.
No, not exclusively. Of course not.
Be fair, Chris. This was.
I am being fair.
Again, this was.
He said, we're going to put you all back in chains.
This is no more a racial comment than when Speaker Boehner talks about unshackling Wall Street and unshackling big business. And I think the vice president was correct in exactly how he explained what happens when we unshackle Wall Street and let Wall Street go back to writing its own rules. Mitt Romney thinks it's okay to repeal Wall Street reform and let big banks on Wall Street go back to writing their own rules. We know what happens. That's what got us into this mess. That's what happened when mortgage-backed securities went bust. That's what happens when millions of people lost their jobs. That's what got us into this mess, and I think Vice President Biden President Obama and millions of others don't want to go back to that again.
Is Joe Biden a drag on the ticket?
Absolutely not. I'm happy to have Joe Biden out campaigning, telling his story to the American people, putting in front of people the choice that's going to happen in this election. I'm happy and proud of Joe Biden, and I'm happy and proud to have him out on the trail every day.
One last question. We've got a minute left. This week, Mitt Romney has repeatedly criticized the tone of the president's conduct of this campaign. Let's watch.
Mr. President, take your campaign of division and anger and hate back to Chicago and let us get about rebuilding and reuniting America.
What do you make of all this talk about how angry the president is?
Chris, you should interview your reporters that were out with the president this week. The president was in Iowa first talking about how we pass a farm bill to help farmers and ranchers that are dealing with the worst droughts in our history. The next day, he talked about how we continue to add clean energy jobs to our economy by extending the tax cut for wind energy. The president yesterday was talking about taxes in our budget. Nobody that's been with the president or seen the president thinks he's running anything other than a campaign on the issues that are important to the American people. And I want to be honest with you, I'm not going to get lectured by Mitt Romney or anybody on the Romney campaign about the tone of this campaign. This is a guy who's flown all over the country saying he's not sure whether the president believes in America. Right? We're auctioning off dinners with the birther-in-chief, right-wing nut job, Donald Trump, who still questions whether or not the president was born in the United States of America. I'm happy to listen to charges and countercharges, but the notion that we're going to get lectured by Mitt Romney and his campaign about running a positive campaign, that's a pill far too big to swallow.
Robert, thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks
Chris.
for coming on in. Always good to talk with you.
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.